The stars shimmered across the darkness of deep space, casting a cold light on the hull of the Wanderer, a mid-sized exploration vessel belonging to the Galactic Confederation. It drifted silently through a sector so remote it hadn't even been included in the next 10-year galactic survey plans. From the ship's observation deck, Commander Tahoe watched the unknown planet slowly rotate beneath them, a serene orb of blue-green, swirling with white clouds. According to every known chart and database, this planet was supposed to be untouched by intelligent life, inhabited only by plant species and perhaps a few low-level animals. But something wasn't right. "Commander, I'm picking up something strange," Officer Dune called from his station. His three eyes blinked rapidly, antennae twitching in confusion as he tapped through energy readings. "The energy signals from the surface. They don't match anything natural. It's organized, controlled." Tahoe turned sharply. "That's not possible," he muttered. His species was known for its calm demeanor, but even he felt a jolt of surprise ripple along his spine. "Run a full scan. I want everything." The crew sprang into action, their movements a symphony of efficiency. These were professional explorers trained to operate at the very edges of known space. Science Officer Mi, a member of a high-intelligence aquatic species known for its analytical precision, was already working furiously. Her blue skin shimmered under the screen light as her four-fingered hands flew across the control panel. "Analysis complete," she said minutes later. "The signatures indicate artificial power sources. Someone down there is using technology." Silence fell across the bridge. "Impossible," Tahoe said again, though this time with less certainty. The sector was listed as completely uninhabited. No colonization missions had ever targeted this region. It wasn't even on the Confederation's long-range expansion plans. "Cross-reference our records again." "I already have 3 times," Mia replied. "There's no record of any mission, civilian or military, ever coming here." Tahoe's gaze returned to the planet below. From above, it was breathtaking. Vast oceans, jagged continents, storms swirling over green forests. But the data didn't lie. Something intelligent had made a home here. Or worse, something had always been here and they'd never known. "Take us into low orbit," he ordered. "Full sensor sweep. I want to see everything." As the Wanderer descended, its scanners combed every inch of the surface, revealing patterns no natural formation could explain. Structures, settlements, entire clusters of buildings, particularly concentrated on the planet's northern continent. "Commander," said Navigator Juno, eyes wide as she pointed to the display, "there are cities down there. Or at least towns. But the architecture is strange, some of it's primitive stone and wood. But some of it clearly uses advanced tech. Get a visual on the largest settlement," Tahoe ordered. When the screen updated, the image was surreal, an entire village built from natural materials but blended seamlessly with futuristic enhancements. It looked like something out of a dream or a myth. There were no spaceports, no satellites in orbit, no transmissions. And yet, someone had built a civilization here. Tahoe felt a knot forming in his gut, the kind of instinctual dread that came from too many unexplained variables. "We need to see it up close," he said finally. "Prepare a landing party. I'll lead it. Me, Dion, Juno, you're with me. Environmental suits, full first contact protocol." 2 hours later, their shuttle pierced the atmosphere, descending slowly through purple-tinged clouds toward a large clearing near one of the smaller settlements. The team remained silent, each officer scanning instruments, preparing for whatever might meet them on the surface. The air was clean. Sensors showed, slightly denser than expected, but breathable. Still, protocol demanded their helmets stay sealed for now. When the landing ramp lowered, Tahoe was the first to step onto the alien world. The gravity was just a bit heavier than standard, making his footsteps feel more deliberate. All around the clearing, tall trees with amethyst leaves rustled in a gentle wind. Then Dune's voice crackled through the calm. Life forms approaching, humanoid in shape, moving cautiously. A dozen figures emerged from the trees, walking slowly but without fear. Their posture was relaxed, though careful. No visible weapons. No signs of hostility. And then Miai's voice, almost a whisper, said what no one dared to believe. "Commander, they're human." Tahoe froze. He blinked hard, adjusting the focus of his visor. But she was right. The approaching beings had 2 arms, 2 legs, and walked upright. They wore simple clothing, woven fabrics, leathers, and their faces were unmistakably human. Not similar, not inspired by, human. "This far from Earth?" Diu muttered in disbelief. "That's not just improbable, it's impossible." The group stopped 10 meters from the team. An older man with gray hair and a trimmed beard stepped forward. He looked calm, wise even. Then he spoke in perfect standard Galactic, the official trade language of the Confederation. "Welcome to our world," he said, voice steady. "We have been expecting visitors from the stars, for many generations." Tahoe slowly unsealed his helmet and removed it as symbol of trust. "I am Commander Tahoe of the Galactic Confederation vessel Wanderer," he said. "Can you explain how humans came to be on this planet?" The old man smiled kindly. "My name is Kian, and yes, we have much to share." Nothing about this encounter was routine. As they followed Kian back to the village, the team realized they weren't just facing another unknown species or a mysterious anomaly, they were standing on the edge of something much bigger. These weren't just lost colonists. They were the beginning of a story no one in the galaxy had ever told. The walk into the village felt like stepping through time and into something utterly foreign yet oddly familiar. Commander Tahoe had seen many worlds during his years in service: lush jungle planets, dead rocky spheres, even artificial habitats suspended in deep space. But nothing had prepared him for this. The outer edge of the settlement resembled a rustic earth village. Wooden houses with thatched roofs, small gardens full of vegetables and herbs, cobblestone paths weaving through open clearings. But woven into the humble setting were unmistakable signs of technology that shouldn't have existed here: gleaming pipes that cleaned themselves, stone walls that shimmered in the sunlight, and windows that dimmed at a touch. It was both primitive and advanced, like a dream Earth might have had if it had grown without war, pollution, or greed. Inside a large gathering hall at the heart of the village, the alien delegation was welcomed with handcrafted mugs of tea, served by smiling humans who looked just as curious as they were hospitable. Tahoe sat across from Kian, the bearded elder who had first greeted them, while his crew took their places along a circular wooden table that felt warm to the touch, almost alive. "How is it possible?" Tahoe finally asked, his voice calm but urgent. "The nearest human colony is hundreds of light years away. Human deep space travel wasn't capable of reaching this region 5 centuries ago. Yet here you are. Here you are." Kian nodded slowly, as if he had rehearsed this conversation in his mind many times. "Our ancestors were not ordinary colonists. They were scientists, engineers, and visionaries. People who believed humanity could be more than what it had become, more than what the governments of Earth allowed." He looked out the open window as if seeing a memory floating in the breeze. Back then, Earth had begun restricting research in what they called dangerous domains: genetic manipulation, cognitive enhancement, long-term human evolution. Some of the greatest minds were silenced or threatened, so they left. Miai leaned forward, her tablet recording every word. Left with what? The technology needed to travel this far didn't exist then, not in any public record. Kian's smile deepened. "Not in any record you've seen. They built an experimental faster-than-light drive, using principles no longer taught, ideas that were dismissed as fantasy. Only a few hundred people believed in the mission, but they succeeded. They found this planet and chose isolation over compromise." "Why not return?" Juno asked. "Why not reconnect once it was safe?" "Because returning would mean becoming what we were running from," said a soft, steady voice. Everyone turned as a woman entered the hall, tall, poised, with flowing white hair and a youthful face that defied her apparent age. She wore a robe patterned with shapes that shimmered like running water, and when she moved, there was a subtle energy in the air. "This is Yuna," Kian said, standing to greet her. "She leads our colony now." Yuna nodded politely to the guests. For 500 years we've lived here in peace, not out of fear, but by choice. Our ancestors believed that isolation was necessary to evolve not just scientifically, but spiritually, biologically, even ethically. She gestured toward the open door where children laughed outside, playing among the trees. We are not the same humans who left Earth. Not entirely. Tahoe sat quietly for a moment, watching the children. He remembered the girl Nari. They had called her the one who had lifted a tree as easily as one might lift a basket. I saw one of your people lift an object that should have weighed several tons. It wasn't a machine. It was her, using only her strength. Yuna smiled again. Yes, enhanced strength is common among us now. So is accelerated healing. Some can even sense emotions. A few can move small objects without touching them. We call it reaching. Telekinesis, Miai whispered. Yuna turned to her. That's what your kind calls it? Yes, but for us, it's not a power, it's an expression of connection. The bond between mind, body, and environment. But how? Asked Tahoe. How did you achieve all this? The radiation from our twin suns affects neural development, explained Dewan, the colony's chief scientist who had entered behind Yuna. He was shorter than most, with sharp eyes and calloused hands. Our bodies adapted. The water, the plants, the animals, everything here contributed to our transformation. Over generations, certain abilities emerged and became part of our normal biology. Is it heritable? Dian asked. Genetic? Yes, Dawan said. At first, the enhancements were external biotech, nanotherapy, gene editing. But over time, evolution took over. Now, these traits are passed on naturally. Children born today don't need implants or injections. They are simply more. Tahoe exchanged glances with his crew. The implications were staggering. These humans hadn't just survived, they had changed. No wars, no outside interference, and no limit to what they could become. But Earth, Mia said carefully, if they knew, they would either fear us, Yuna interrupted, or try to use it. Neither is acceptable. That's why we've stayed hidden. Until now. Juno looked around the hall. But you knew someone would come. You said you were expecting us. For generations, Kian confirmed. The stars change. Light patterns shift. Sooner or later, someone was bound to find us. And now you have. Now you have. Tahoe leaned forward, his voice quieter now. And what do you want, now that we're here? Yuna's gaze met his without hesitation. To be left in peace, but also to be understood. We don't seek power or conquest. We seek respect for what we've built, for what we've become. There was a silence that settled like mist between them. The Confederation had protocols for encounters like this, but nothing in those handbooks prepared them for humans who had, through isolation, redefined what it meant to be human. Tahoe finally nodded. Then we'll listen. We'll learn. And as night fell once more over the hidden colony, the stars above no longer felt so distant. For the first time in 500 years, these people were no longer alone. And neither was humanity. Morning light spilled across the village like a warm tide, casting golden hues on the rooftops and glinting off surfaces that didn't quite belong to any one definition of technology. To the crew of the Wanderer, the settlement looked like something out of a lost age. Modest homes made of stone and wood, winding dirt paths, open-air market. But the closer they looked, the more they realized this was no ordinary society. Everything had purpose and everything was alive in some way. Tahoe stood beside Miai, watching as a stream of crystal-clear water flowed through a translucent pipe along one of the main buildings. The water glowed faintly in the early sun, and there were no pumps, no filters, no visible source of energy, just an elegant, self-sustaining system. It purifies itself, Dewan explained, joining them. The colony's chief scientist moved with an energy that belied his age. The pipes are made from a plant-derived compound. We modified local flora to grow into hollow conduit. Their inner membranes remove impurities on a cellular level better than any filter your Confederation ships carry. You engineered plants to be plumbing? Miai asked, eyebrows raised. Doan grinned. We didn't force the design. We encouraged it. The plants evolved with us. Everywhere the Wanderer crew walked, they saw similar wonders. The streetlights weren't electric. They were bioluminescent vines coiled along wooden poles, glowing brighter when the sun dipped low. Benches weren't forged from metal or cut from wood. They grew, organically shaped to suit the posture of those who sat. Even the food preparation buildings used heat-generating stone plates powered not by fuel, but by chemical reactions with locally harvested minerals. This building, Miai said, running her hand along a wall that shimmered silver in the sunlight, looks like wood. But it changes color depending on the angle. It's called living metal, said Yuna, the colony's leader, who had silently walked up beside them. It's a fusion of local hardwoods and a rare mineral compound found only in the southern ridges. As the trees grow, they absorb the mineral naturally. Our scientists developed a method to coax that process, bonding the materials at the cellular level. Tahoe watched her as she spoke, her calm confidence, her connection to every element around them. She wasn't just proud of her people's advancement, she was a part of them. And it's not just structural, Duan added. The material adapts. It breathes in heat, resists cold, and responds to touch. We don't build like you do, we grow what we need. It's not about controlling nature, Yuna said softly. It's about harmonizing with it. Later that afternoon, they visited the agricultural fields just beyond the village. Neat rows of crops stretched out under the twin suns. Yet there were no machines, no farm hands, no irrigation systems in sight. These look like earth plants, Juno said, crouching near a vine heavy with bright red pot. They were once, replied a young woman named Aya, a botanist who had volunteered to give them a tour. But over time, they've changed. We've altered their genomes to be more efficient. One of these pods can feed an adult for 2 days. Genetically modified? Miai asked. Yes, but not in the way your labs do it, Aya explained. We work slowly, over generations. It's more like sculpting than editing. The plants aren't just resistant to disease, they understand the soil, the seasons, even our nutritional needs. That's impossible, Juno whispered. No, Aya replied gently. It's cooperative evolution. In another field, children played among tall grasses while large six-legged creatures moved logs and stones nearby. The animals resembled bears, but with scaled skin and deep violet eyes. Their movements were coordinated, deliberate. At one point, one of them paused to sniff a child who had fallen, then nudged the youngster gently back to her feet before returning to its work. They're not pets, Yuna explained. We call them shapers, native to this world. We formed a bond with them long ago. They understand us. Some even respond to our thoughts. You have telepathic communication. With animals? Dune asked, clearly trying to keep the disbelief out of his voice. Not with words. With emotions, with intent, said Doan, who had rejoined the group. We don't command them, we partner with them. It's a connection that developed over generations, and it begins with our children. As if summoned by his words, a group of children ran across the field, laughing as they played a game that looked like tag mixed with hide and seek. Overhead, enormous bird-like creatures soared on leathery wings, their shadows rippling across the grass. Then, one child wandered too close to the edge of a steep drop. Before anyone could react, one of the flying creatures swooped down silently and used its wing to gently guide the child back from danger. That's a watcher, Aya said. They protect the young, and the young, in turn, unconsciously signal when they're in trouble. It's instinctual now. The crew stood speechless. These weren't trained responses. These were organic relationships, deep symbiotic ties between species, developed and passed down through emotion and thought. I've never seen anything like this, Miai murmured. This isn't just science, it's art. They returned to the village as the twin suns began to lower in the sky. On the way, Doan paused under a fruit tree bearing large purple orbs. He glanced up at a particularly ripe one. Without raising his hand, he simply stared. The fruit detached from the branch and floated down into his waiting palm. Tahoe's breath caught. I whispered, actual telekinesis. Doan bit into the fruit, juice running down his chin. We don't use that word. We call it reaching. It's not about power, it's about intention. Most of us can move small things. Some, like Nari, can do much more. Tahoe shook his head slowly, absorbing everything. And this is why you've stayed hidden. Yuna nodded. If Earth knew what we'd become, they might try to control it. Or worse, fear it. And they wouldn't be entirely wrong to worry, Juno added. Abilities like these, they could shift galactic balance. Yuna met her gaze calmly. We're not interested in shifting anything, only in surviving. We've built a peaceful, sustainable society. Our children grow up healthy, curious, and connected. No one is left behind. And everything we build, everything serves life, not control. As the stars returned to the sky, Tahoe stood at the edge of the village, looking out at glowing trees, walking animals, and a society unlike anything he'd seen before. These weren't humans who had fallen out of history. They were humans who had rewritten it. Commander Tahoe stood inside the Wanderer's map room, arms crossed, staring at the 3D holographic projection of the planet rotating slowly above the table. Bright red lines pulsed across the northern continent, the same region where the colony had been thriving for generations. Sunu, the ship's chief navigator and geotechnical analyst, looked unusually tense. He zoomed in on the tectonic overlays, fingers moving quickly as he highlighted tremor zones and seismic fault lines. "It's not good, Commander," he said grimly. "I ran 3 independent scans. The entire tectonic plate beneath the colony is destabilizing." Tahoe furrowed his brow. "How long?" "Months, maybe weeks," Sunu replied. "The planet's crust is thin in that region. The energy flow from the mantle has no clear escape. If it builds up any further, we're looking at catastrophic tectonic events. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, maybe even total surface collapse." Silence fell. The implications were staggering. Hundreds of lives, human and alien, living unknowingly on a ticking bomb. "We have to warn them," Mia said firmly from across the room. "I agree," Tahoe replied. "Let's arrange a meeting with their leader." The next morning, Tahoe, Mi, and Sunu made their way to the colony's central meeting hall. Yuna, Duan, and several village elders waited inside, calm but alert. When the crew shared what they had found, they didn't see panic but something closer to weary understanding. "We know," Doan said after a pause, gently placing a hand on the table. "We've been monitoring the tremors for the past year." "You knew the ground was unstable?" Mi asked, surprised. "We did," Doan answered. "But our resources are stretched thin. We've been reinforcing buildings and relocating people to higher ground. Still, it's not enough. If the worst happens, we won't be able to evacuate everyone." Tahoe exchanged a glance with Miai and Sunu. "Then let us help. The Confederation has protocols for planetary evacuations. We can start moving your people within days." Huna, a young colony engineer who had been quiet until now, looked troubled. "Leave?" he said softly. "This is our home. For over 5 centuries, it's more than soil and stone. We've shaped this world and it has shaped us." "Where would we even go?" Yuna asked, her voice calm but tinged with sorrow. "Other human colonies wouldn't accept us. And I doubt the Confederation would allow us to settle freely, not with our abilities." Just then, an incoming transmission lit up Tahoe's communicator. Back on the Wanderer, Admiral Kang's green-scaled face appeared on the main screen. He was the highest-ranking officer in this sector of space. "I've reviewed your initial reports," Kang said, his voice serious. "The situation is complex. If the colony must be evacuated, we'll need a long-term solution. These humans, while peaceful, possess abilities that could destabilize existing interspecies relations. We can't just drop them on another world and hope for the best." "With respect, Admiral," Tahoe replied, "we can't leave them here to die either." "I'm not suggesting we do," Kang said. "I'm dispatching a diplomatic team. Keep the situation contained until they arrive. That evening, Tahoe sat in the colony garden beneath the twin moons, watching soft blue lights pulse gently from the village's living structures. Zhu, the Confederation's senior anthropologist, joined him. She had spent weeks documenting every aspect of the colony's culture and was now struggling with what she'd discovered. "They've built something beautiful here," she said quietly, "and now it might all vanish under their feet." Suddenly, the ground trembled, a deep, resonant shake that lasted several seconds. Not the first, but the strongest so far. Lights flickered in the distance. Birds took flight from the trees. Tahoe stood, already tapping into his calm. "Wanderer, this is Commander Tahoe. Prepare emergency evacuation protocol. We may not have much time." He turned toward the central plaza, where colonists were already helping one another, children held tight, elders guided to safety. Dust filled the air. Cracks split the earth beneath their feet. "Everyone stay together," Mei shouted as she and Sunu arrived with more equipment. But Yuna, standing in the middle of the chaos with white hair whipping in the wind, raised her hand calmly. "We have another option," she said, voice strong despite the shaking. "Follow me. Bring your scientist." Tahoe didn't hesitate. He motioned for his crew to join her. Yuna led them to what looked like a humble storage shed on the edge of the village. Inside, she pressed her hand against what appeared to be a wooden wall. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a narrow stairwell carved deep into the earth. "How far down does this go?" Sunu asked. "Almost 2 kilometers," Huna replied as they descended. We needed to get close to the mantle. When they reached the bottom, a massive metal door loomed ahead. Duan placed his palm against a sensor. With a heavy groan, it opened. What lay inside made the aliens stop in stunned silence. The chamber was immense, larger than any building they had seen on the surface. In the center sat a device unlike anything from the Confederation's databases. Part machine, part organism, it pulsed with light and motion. Vines, cables, and glowing fluid ran through its structure. Giant, root-like extensions spread into the rock walls. "What is this?" Nyai whispered, eyes wide. "Our terraforming prototype," Doan said. "We've been building it for 50 years. It's designed to stabilize tectonic activity by redistributing energy through the planet's core." "You have a terraforming device and it's alive," Tahoe. "Yes," Yuna answered. "It grows, it adapts, but we've never had the power to activate it fully." Mia was already scanning the control interface. "If we reroute energy from the Wanderer's main drive, we might be able to power it." "You're suggesting draining the ship?" Tahoe asked. "We'd be stranded here." "Temporarily," Mia said. "If it works, we save the colony. If it doesn't." Her voice trailed off. The ground shook again, more violently this time. Dust fell from the ceiling. A crack appeared along one of the chamber walls. "How long to complete the power transfer?" Tahoe asked. "4 hours," Mia said. 3 if we rush." "We don't have 3, Una said urgently. "Then we work faster," Tahoe said. He tapped his comm. "This is Commander Tahoe. I need all available engineering personnel at my location immediately. We're going to help the colonists save their world." And with that, the line between visitors and natives disappeared. Side by side, alien engineers and human scientists began the most important project of their lives. Not to explore, not to conquer, but to save a home. Inside the underground chamber, a flurry of activity unfolded like a synchronized dance between species that, until days ago, had never even met. The Wanderer's engineers unloaded crates of tools, battery packs, and converters, working shoulder to shoulder with the colony's scientists, who moved with quiet urgency and intimate knowledge of the strange machine they had spent 5 decades constructing. This was no longer a diplomatic visit. It was a race against time. Mia crouched beside the main control panel, fingers flying across her datapad as she calculated the conversion ratios. "We'll need to bypass the ship's auxiliary grid and draw directly from the main drive. It's risky, but it's the only way to generate the power required." Tahoe stood nearby, jaw tight, watching as thick cables from the Wanderer were fed into the base of the terraforming device. The conduits pulsed with dim light, still dormant, still waiting. "How long can the ship function on emergency reserves?" he asked. "Maybe 2 weeks," Mia replied. "No long-range communications, no FDL capability. If we do this, we're cut off completely." Tahoe nodded, knowing what the choice meant. "Do it." She hesitated for only a second, then tapped the final command. Above them, the lights dimmed as the chamber drew in power. The massive machine began to glow, a soft pulse radiating from its core like a heartbeat slowly coming to life. Vines wrapped around energy conduits. Liquids in translucent tubes began to swirl faster, as if the machine was breathing. "Power transfer at 30, Mia reported. "We're waking it up." Another tremor rippled through the ground, stronger this time. A section of the chamber wall cracked. Rock dust rained from above. "We need to move fast," Duan said, brushing debris from his shoulders. "The terraforming system requires activation from 7 energy pillars spread across the planet. We've already installed them at key tectonic points, but they must be triggered manually within a narrow window after the core process begins." "How narrow?" asked Sunu, who had just arrived with new geological readings. 20 minutes, Duan replied. 20 minutes? Sunu's eyes widened. "The farthest site is over 50 kilometers from here. We'll never reach them all in time." "You won't have to," said Yuna, who entered the chamber with several colonists at her side. "Our people are already in position. We've been preparing for this day." Mia looked up from her screen, puzzled. "How will they know when to activate?" Yuna placed a hand over her chest. "We're linked through what you call telepathy. But it's more than that. Our minds form a chain, a network. We don't communicate in words. We feel each other. When the time comes, we'll all know." Above ground, the situation worsened. The earth trembled constantly now. Buildings creaked, trees leaned. In the village square, families huddled together while others formed circles, holding hands, eyes closed in deep concentration. Even children participated, their faces calm, almost serene. "They're forming the link," Huna explained to the arriving engineer. "We've trained for this moment. Every person in the colony is contributing to the mental chain. It allows us to coordinate instantly, across vast distances." Back in the chamber, Miai's voice broke through the tension. "Power transfer at 90, 95, complete." A silence fell. Then the device exhaled. The room filled with an almost musical hum. The glowing vines brightened, flowing with light. The root-like extensions pulsed, sending energy through the walls. On a monitor, 7 dots began to flash. "The pillars are activating," Dawn confirmed. "The network is forming." Outside, a beam of brilliant blue-white light shot into the sky from the center of the village. Moments later, another followed, then another. One by one, across the horizon, 6 more energy pillars erupted like lances of lightning piercing the heavens. The sky shimmered with power. Arcs of energy connected the pillars, forming a web across the planet's surface. The ground still shook, but differently now. Not violently, but rhythmically, as if the planet were adjusting, responding. Inside the Wanderer, still operating on minimal emergency power, Commander Tahoe watched from the bridge as the display came to life with new readings. "The network is stabilizing tectonic stress levels," Sunu reported, awe in his voice. "Energy is being channeled through the crust. We're relieving the pressure. It's working." Cheers broke out both aboard the ship and in the chamber below. Colonists embraced, engineers high-fived. Scientists wept quietly, overwhelmed by what they had accomplished together. In less than a day, species from different worlds had come together to save an entire planet. But the work wasn't done yet. Inside the control chamber, Miai and several colony scientists monitored the pulse and frequency of the device's core output. "It's holding," she said, "but the strain is massive. The system is evolving faster than we expected. We need to fine-tune the flow." "Then we keep going," Duan replied. We built it to adapt, now we let it. Meanwhile, Admiral Kang's flagship dropped out of faster-than-light travel in high orbit. The bridge crew fell into stunned silence as they witnessed the network of glowing energy encasing the planet like a protective net. "What in the star's name?" Kang whispered as data flooded his display. Tahoe's image appeared on the comm screen. "Admiral, we've stabilized the planet using the colony's terraforming device. They built it. We powered it. We've saved thousands of lives." Kang leaned forward slowly, his eyes scanning the image of interconnected energy beams. "You risked your ship, your crew, and broke protocol. But you may have just rewritten the future of planetary science." In the days that followed, the ground finally stopped shaking. Dust cleared, blue skies returned, the air was crisp and still, and the land beneath the colonists' feet felt solid again. Reconstruction began immediately. Buildings were repaired with superhuman speed. Debris was cleared by children and elders alike, using strength and abilities that still astonished their alien allies. And in a quiet corner of the village, a tree with deep purple leaves began to grow where a time capsule had just been buried, a shared record of everything they'd learned, achieved, and become. Tahoe stood next to Yuna, watching as colonists planted new gardens under the now stable Earth. "We couldn't have done this without you," he said. "We couldn't have done it without you," she replied. And as dusk fell, the energy pillars still shone, no longer a warning of doom, but a symbol of hope. A beacon that, far beyond the reaches of the Confederation, had already begun attracting new eyes from the stars. The future had arrived not through conquest or dominance, but through unity, trust, and the refusal to let a world die. 3 days had passed since the energy pillars burst from the surface of the planet, forming a glowing network visible even from orbit. What once was a quiet, hidden world now pulsed with life and light, a beacon no longer in the shadows. Inside the command center of the Wanderer, now running on minimal systems, Commander Tahoe stood before a large communication screen. Across from him, 12 faces stared back, members of the Galactic Confederation Council. Each represented a different species, some scaled, some feathered, others with skin like polished stone. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to concern. "Thank you for assembling on such short notice," said Ju, the senior Confederation anthropologist, as she stepped into view. "What we found here changes everything we thought we knew about human potential." She tapped her control pad. The screen split in two, revealing high-resolution images. Children levitating small objects, bioluminescent buildings growing from the ground, genetically engineered plants glowing with natural energy. "These humans have been isolated for over 5 centuries, Ju continued. "During that time, they've not only survived, they've evolved. Enhanced strength, emotional telepathy, accelerated healing, and, most recently, successful planetary-scale terraforming." Murmurs rippled through the council. A reptilian member leaned forward, his yellow eyes narrowing. "Are they dangerous?" "They've shown no aggression," Ju replied. "They live in peace, work with nature, and welcome outsiders with grace. But their abilities are unlike anything seen in known human populations. If weaponized by choice or coercion, they could be destabilizing." Council members exchanged glances. A fur-covered delegate tapped his claws thoughtfully. Could these traits spread? Could exposure to this environment alter others? "Yes," I interjected from behind you. "Some Wanderer crew members are already displaying early signs of neural adaptation. Heightened empathy, faster reflexes, intuitive calculations. It's likely due to the radiation of the twin suns in combination with local bio-compounds." One member hissed softly. "Then, the danger is not only what they are, but what they could make others become." Tahoe stepped forward. "They're not a threat. They could be the beginning of something extraordinary. A new model of coexistence, humans and environment, technology and biology, joined instead of divided." The council fell silent, absorbing the implication. After the call ended, Admiral Kang arrived at the colony aboard his flagship. He stepped into the rebuilt control room, where humans and aliens worked side by side, sharing data, calibrating systems, and adjusting the new planetary energy grid. Kang took one slow look around, his yellow eyes scanning the glowing vines, the transparent monitors, and the machine that had stabilized the planet's core. Then he turned to Tahoe. "When we lost contact with the Wanderer, I expected debris," Kang said. "Instead, I find a miracle." Tahoe smiled slightly. "One made by cooperation." Kang walked slowly to the center of the room, facing Yuna and the other colony leaders. "The Confederation Council is deliberating your status. There are concerns, fears, questions." "We understand," Yuna said calmly. "We've lived in secrecy for a reason." "You've built something beautiful," Kang admitted. "But power always invites scrutiny. Some on the council want your research sealed. Others want your people relocated. Still more worry about the ripple effect your presence will cause across human colonies and beyond." Yuna stood her ground. "We're not here to be studied, and we won't be moved like pieces on a game board. This is our home." Kang looked at her with respect. "And you've earned the right to defend it. I will recommend the Confederation recognize this colony as a sovereign entity, with full rights to self-govern." A hush fell across the room. Tahoe glanced toward Yu, who nodded silently. This was unprecedented. No human colony had ever been granted sovereignty without first passing through dozens of bureaucratic layers. But the Confederation had never encountered this kind of human colony before. "I also suggest establishing a Confederation outpost in orbit," Kang continued. "A symbol of mutual trust. We'll provide protection if you share your findings." Yuna considered the offer. "As long as we remain free, we are willing to share knowledge. Not because we're pressured. Because we believe progress comes from exchange, not isolation." That evening, the colony held a quiet celebration. Long tables were set up in the central plaza, now free of cracks and debris. Freshly harvested fruit and rich, nourishing dishes lined the wooden platters. Confederation crew members sat beside colonists, eating, talking, laughing. Children played with small displays of levitation, nothing dangerous, just enough to dazzle their visitors. Mei sat on a bench, staring at her hands. She had just predicted a system malfunction 10 seconds before it happened without a sensor alert. Her reaction had been instant, intuitive, as if her body knew before her mind did. "The radiation is affecting us," she said quietly to Tahoe, who stood beside her. "Yes," he agreed. "You're changing. And not just me." Dune senses emotion shifts before people speak. Sunu solved a level 6 navigation matrix in his head without a calculator. "Are you afraid?" Tahoe asked. She shook her head. "No, I'm curious. These humans didn't just evolve. They unlocked something we didn't think was possible. And now," Tahoe said thoughtfully, "we might too." In the following days, the Confederation team began the process of documenting and learning from the colony's methods. In a new research wing built with both technology and living metal scientists from both groups worked together, analyzing everything from energy flows to soil chemistry. No guards, no fences, no secrets, just shared purpose. A small team even traveled to the southern ridge with colony scouts to find new mineral deposits that could help expand the energy network. The terraforming system, once seen as mysterious and risky, was now being studied for replication. Planets with unstable crusts once thought uninhabitable could now be saved. And then came the message. Sensors on the edge of the star system picked up faint signals alien in origin. Not from the Confederation, not from any known species. Deep space explorers, curious travelers, opportunists. No one knew for certain, but it was clear the light from the planet's terraforming pillars, the shield of hope, as the colonists had come to call it, was visible far beyond the Confederation's borders. Others had seen it. Others were coming. As the Wanderer began restoring its full systems, Tahoe recorded one final log entry from the observation deck. The energy field shimmered below, wrapping the planet in threads of blue and white. "We came here expecting an anomaly. What we found was the future, not just for humans or for the Confederation, but for everyone who dares to ask what else is possible when fear gives way to trust and when knowledge is shared freely. Below him, the colonists continued to build, not just homes, but peace. The skies above the colony were calm now. Where once there had been rolling tremors and ash-darkened air, now stood a planet reborn. The energy pillars remained 7 shimmering spires that connected across the horizon like strands in a galactic web. What once threatened to be a mass extinction had become a miracle. Inside one of the newly constructed research halls grown from the living metal, the colonists had mastered me stood beside a group of scientists from both the Wanderer and the colony. Her normally steady hands trembled slightly as she recalibrated a sensor device, but it wasn't from fear or fatigue. She had felt the malfunction before it happened. A flicker, a pressure in her thoughts. And when her hand had snapped forward to press the override switch 2 seconds early, she knew instinctively what had occurred. "That's the 3rd time this week," she muttered, staring at her fingertips. "It's like my brain is running ahead of the ship's systems." Doan, the colony's chief scientist, glanced up from his console. "The effects are accelerating." "I didn't even eat the fruit," she said, almost defensively. "It's not just the food," Doan explained gently. "It's the planet, the radiation from the twin suns, the water, the air, the energy fields. Your body is adapting on a neural level. So is your mind." I turned to him, eyes wide. "You knew this would happen." Doan nodded. "Not exactly how, but yes. We suspected long-term exposure might have an effect, even in short-term visitors." Commander Tahoe entered then, having heard the tail end of the exchange. He looked between me, and Duan, then stepped quietly beside them. "You're not alone," he said. Sunu solved a multi-variable trajectory calculation in 10 seconds without a terminal. Dion picked up on someone's emotional state before they spoke a word. "Ju says her dreams are becoming more connected." "And you?" Mai asked softly. Tahoe paused. "I'm beginning to remember things I never consciously learned. Tactical maps, battle outcomes, details from books I read once as a cadet." Outside, the colony was alive with activity. New homes had already been raised in areas deemed tectonically stable. Children ran between work crews, helping without being told, sensing what was needed and moving instinctively into place. The once fractured village was now a hybrid of Confederation tech and colony-grown design, an emblem of a future forged together. In the village plaza, under the shadow of a flowering tree with violet leaves, Huna and Julu worked on a time capsule. They were placing data chips, handwritten letters, sketches, and even pieces of equipment into a cylindrical container made from reinforced living metal. Tahoe approached, hands in his pocket. "Is that what I think it is?" "For future generations," Yu confirmed. "A record of what happened here, what we learned, what we became, and where will it go?" Huna smiled. "Under this tree, a place where children play and the roots run deep. When it's found again 10 years or 10 centuries from now, it will be a reminder that we chose unity over fear." Across the settlement, Admiral Kang and Yuna sat beneath a curved archway made of crystal-veined wood. Their conversation was low, but meaningful. "This arrangement is unconventional," Kang admitted. "The Confederation is used to integrating colonies into existing structures, not granting full sovereignty." Yuna responded evenly. "We're not asking for favors, just respect. We'll share what we've built, what we've discovered. But we are not an experiment." Kang nodded. "You've earned that. I'll see to it personally," and he meant it. As the celebration began that evening, the village took on an almost dreamlike glow. Vines curled upward along buildings, casting soft bioluminescent light. Food was served in communal circles, colonists and Confederation officers side by side, passing plates, exchanging stories, and laughing freely. Children demonstrated small displays of telekinesis, carefully lifting fruit from tables and sending it gently into waiting hands. Some played musical instruments grown directly from hollow reeds, their songs echoing across the open square. Tahoe watched it all from a short distance, standing beside me. Hard to believe this was almost destroyed just a few days ago. It feels like a different world, Mia said. It is a different world, he replied. And so are we. She looked up at him. You think we're changing permanently? I think we're evolving, Tahoe said. And not just biologically. This place is more than fertile soil and strange radiation. It's a mirror, a reminder of what humanity could have been if we'd grown without fear. They fell silent for a moment, both caught in the hum of voices, laughter, and music. Then came the final confirmation. High-orbit observatories across Confederation space began reporting faint light anomalies. A soft blue-white pulse, faint, distant, had become visible across multiple systems. The energy field, it turned out, was not just functional. It was radiant. What does that mean? Diana asked when the report came through. It means we're no longer alone, Tahoe said. Others will see the light, other civilizations, curious ones, cautious ones, and maybe dangerous ones. The Wanderer's systems were beginning to recover. The main reactor hummed with low energy again. Communications were partially restored. But the crew was different now, more sensitive, more attuned. They weren't just officers anymore. They were part of something larger. Ju gathered the officers for one final briefing before Admiral Kang's departure. She held a small recording device and played her final cultural analysis. These colonists didn't just survive, they transcended. Their isolation didn't weaken them, it refined them. And now, their presence will ripple outward through the stars. She paused, scanning the room. But make no mistake, what happened here won't stay here. Whether through exposure, imitation, or contact, this evolution will spread. And the galaxy will never be the same. Yuna arrived quietly, standing near the edge of the gathering. Is that what you fear? She asked. That others will become like us? No, Ju replied. That they won't learn how you became this way. A long silence followed, thoughtful, not uneasy. As night fell, the energy pillars shimmered like sentinels. The stars blinked above, and the shield of hope, as the colonists now called their planetary network, pulsed across the sky in radiant arcs. It was no longer a secret. It was a promise. A signal to the galaxy. Humanity had not only survived, it had reimagined itself. And from the edge of the known stars, others had begun to listen. The sun hung low in the violet sky as Huna and Ju stood quietly beside the tree with shimmering purple leaves, their hands brushing the top of a polished metallic cylinder. Around them, the world buzzed with renewal machines humming, children laughing, vines blooming against the walls of newly built homes. But here, in this quiet patch of soil, they were doing something different, something lasting. A time capsule, Huna said softly, carefully placing the last memory crystal into the container. Images, data, personal logs, even soil and fruit samples. Everything we've built, everything we've become, all in one place. Ju nodded, her gaze thoughtful. It's not just a record for future generations. It's a statement about who we were before, who we are now, and what we chose to do when the galaxy finally found us. Together, they lowered the capsule into a hollow chamber beneath the roots of the tree. Huna pressed his palm against the smooth bark. A faint pulse of light passed through it, a subtle acknowledgement from the living structure that had grown to be more than a plant. As the earth settled, the tree's leaves seemed to shimmer more brightly, reflecting the last light of the twin suns. Nearby, Commander Tahoe watched the ceremony in silence. He didn't speak, didn't interrupt. Some things he understood were meant to be observed, not led. This wasn't about military decisions or Confederation orders anymore. This was about legacy. Later that evening, a gathering was held in the colony's central plaza. Long tables curved around the square like arms drawn in an embrace. Fresh food lined the tables, fruits, vegetables, and dishes unique to the planet, but shared with every guest. The Confederation officers sat side by side with colonists, no longer outsiders, but participants. Children danced between the tables, giggling as they showed off small feats of control, floating cups, glowing stones, synchronized movements without word. It wasn't boastful, it was joyful. For them, it wasn't magic, it was simply life. Admiral Kang sat across from Yuna, a glass of pale green drink in his hand. "You've built something here," he said. "Not just structures or technology, but harmony. I didn't believe it was possible. Now I wonder if this is what all colonies should have aimed for from the beginning." "We had time," Yuna replied. "Time and silence, and the freedom to fail, to grow, and to listen. Evolution isn't fast, it takes patience." Kang tilted his head. "The Council is still debating. Some fear what you've become. Others see opportunity. I expect both," she said. "But fear tends to shout while opportunity watches quietly." "And what do you want?" he asked. "Now that the galaxy knows you exist?" Yuna looked around at her people at the glowing homes, the connected families, the balance of nature and technology, and answered without hesitation. "We want to belong, but not as something to be studied, not as a warning, as equals." On the outskirts of the celebration, Ju sat cross-legged beside three children, Sora, Minho, and Yona. The same three who had dreamed of the device that saved the planet. They were drawing in the dirt with small sticks, carving spirals and symbols that made no immediate sense to the adult eye. But Ju had learned to wait, to watch. "This one," said Sora, pointing to a circular symbol. "It means we're safe now." "And this one?" Ju asked. Minho smiled. "That means someone else is watching." "Watching us?" Ju asked. "No," Yona said. "Watching the sky. Watching the sky." Across the system, sensors were already confirming it, new signals, faint but steady, moving through the void. Not from any known Confederation territory. Not from Earth. Other civilizations had seen the light from the terraforming pillars. And they were curious. The Wanderer was operational again, though not entirely unchanged. Its systems had adapted during the power drain, and its crew even more so. Subtle enhancements lingered, heightened empathy, predictive cognition, faster recovery rates. No one could say whether the changes were temporary or permanent. But none of the crew seemed to want to leave just yet. In a newly constructed observatory on a nearby cliffside, Tahoe met with me as they looked out over the glowing valley. One of the energy pillars was visible from here, a blue-white spire stretching into the heavens like a monument to possibility. "I keep thinking about what you said," Tahoe said quietly. I turned to him. "Which part? That maybe we didn't just come here to observe evolution? Maybe we're part of it now." I smiled, folding her arms across her chest. "There are worse things than becoming more." They stood in silence, listening to the soft hum of the earth beneath their feet. A planet that had once screamed in pain was now singing, steady and strong. In the following weeks, representatives from the Confederation arrived to begin negotiations for scientific exchange. Not control, not surveillance, just cooperation. Yuna, Huna, Duan, and others welcomed them, not with security details or filtered briefings, but with stories, questions, and open hands. They shared their healing techniques, plants that responded to injuries, nanofibers that stitched flesh without scarring. They shared their building methods, how minerals fused with wood, how houses grew in response to need. And they shared their most valuable lesson, that evolution was not just biological. It was social, emotional, spiritual. "You cannot force growth," Duan said during one of the first exchange forums. "You can only create the conditions for it." The Confederation listened and learned. And beyond the rim of the galaxy, distant watchers continued to study the pulses of energy and the shifting gravitational patterns. Some were scientific, others were strategic. And a few were silent because they understood something new had been born. Not a weapon, not a revolution, but a possibility. At the edge of the colony, where forest met field, a lone outpost had been built, a quiet structure meant to serve as both a lookout and a bridge. Inside, a new group of hybrid personnel was being trained. Half Confederation, half colony-born. People who would carry this knowledge to other systems, not to preach or conquer, but to share and learn. And one day, perhaps, to defend. Because light, this bright, never stays hidden. And peace, true peace, isn't the absence of danger. It's the presence of understanding. As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, the shield of hope shimmered to life above the planet once more. It wasn't just energy, it was identity. A signal to the stars that the forgotten had not only survived but had returned, stronger and more united than ever. The future had begun. And everyone, every world, every species was now part of the same unfolding story.